I hope we can see what life's really like here. But Kim Jong-il controls everything. And the rare times that he's granted foreigners access, they've only been shown idealized versions of the country. Like in this Dutch documentary called A Day in the Life. In this scene, a mother sings nursery rhymes as she walks her child to school.
아니, 승냥이 미국 놈 무릎 꿇고 살려달라.
Then she goes to work at the garment factory. It's a worker's paradise. Finally, she returns home to a lavish meal. The film shows only the cheerful facade, because here, image matters. And North Korea goes to extremes to show its best face to the outside world. From North Korea, you can see the South Korean border village of Taesongdong. It has a 100-meter-tall flagpole towering over it. But just 2.5 kilometers across the border, the North Korean village of Kicheongdong was not to be outdone. They built a flagpole 160 meters high, the tallest in the world. And the town itself is not what it might appear. In this propaganda village, most of the buildings are merely facades. Hollow on the inside, they were built to entice South Koreans to defect to the paradise in the north. It's a fitting metaphor. In North Korea, things aren't necessarily what they seem. After letting us shoot inside the hospital for days, our minders take us for a walk in a park and allow us to bring our cameras. Our cameraman comes across a bench.
So why is it in a glass box?
Sorry?
Why is it in a glass box?
Yeah, and then our people want to preserve no damage.
Oh, yes.
They
It's a special bench, sat upon by none other than Kim Il-sung himself.
That's cool, Mr. Park. Very cool.
Back on the streets of Pyongyang, our cameraman wants to take a photograph of a statue of the great leader. It's huge, so he lies on the ground to make it fit in his shot. But the minder lets us know this is a mistake. A big one.
No, there is no one, no foreigner to just lie down in front of our great leader's statue. I'm afraid tomorrow we are going out of our country.
The minder doesn't follow through on his threat to kick us out of the country. But it's clear that antagonism still exists between North Koreans and outsiders more than 50 years after the fighting ended. In 1910, Korea was colonized by Japan. The brutal occupation ended more than 1,000 years of Korea's reign as a sovereign nation and was a major source of shame. Japan lost Korea in World War II, and the country was split between the American-backed South and the Russian-backed Communist North, led by a young rebel named Kim Il-sung. In 1950, Kim Il-sung invaded the South to unify the country, and the U.S. opposed communist expansion at all costs. As many as 4 million people died in the Korean War, which included some of the most brutal warfare the world has known. In a 4-month period alone, the U.S. dropped nearly 1 million gallons of napalm. 18 of 22 major cities in North Korea were at least half obliterated. In 1953, after 3 years of fighting, Korea remained divided in almost exactly the same place as it had been before the war began, the 38th parallel. While most people think the war ended more than 50 years ago, there never was a peace treaty. And more than 19,000 days later, the very, very long ceasefire continues today. The Joint Security Area on the border of South Korea is the one place where North Korean forces stand toe-to-toe with the rest of the world. On one side of this concrete marker is North Korea. On the other, the joint American-South Korean forces. Every flinch is monitored. Neither side wants to blink, and nobody has for more than 50 years. In this unique area, each side shows its best face. The North puts only well-fed top officers here, and the South stacks their side with men who are at least 1.77 meters or taller. But only one side is worried that their soldiers might want to defect across the divide.
You can see on the North Korean side how they're set up. They have two soldiers watching each other, so neither of them defect. And then they have their leader to the north, making sure that no one else from the north will come down and defect.
On the DMZ, everyone is considered the enemy.
Defector Ju Sung-il was a North Korean officer.
Whether you're a North Korean resident, a soldier, or South Korean defector, we had to kill without question.
With everyone watching, no one can cross here. And defecting anywhere else along the DMZ is nearly impossible. The DMZ, or Demilitarized Zone, is a 4-kilometer wide buffer that runs 238 kilometers along the border of North and South Korea. With more than 1 million landmines, high-voltage electric fences, and nearly 2 million soldiers, crossing over is almost certain suicide. Above ground, the DMZ is an almost impenetrable divide. But below ground, the North has secretly dug at least 4 invasion tunnels into the South. Carved through solid bedrock, the tunnels are wide enough to allow 10,000 North Korean soldiers an hour to sneak behind enemy lines. Some are even big enough to drive a tank through. These tunnels were discovered before they were completed, but military officials think there may be as many as 16 more scattered elsewhere along the DMZ. The DMZ helps North Korea keep its own citizens inside the country and cut off from the rest of the world.
She's very blind, isn't she?
She's totally blind.
At the hospital, more than 1,000 blind patients from all walks of life have been picked by the government to see Dr. Ruitt. Waiting in line, we meet an older woman who's been blind for 7 years. Her son-in-law has brought her today for her preliminary exam. She's totally blind in her right eye and can barely see out of the other.
No hand movement.
Dr. Ruitt's team examines the patients to make sure cataracts are the source of their blindness. A cataract is a clouding of the normally clear lens of the eye. It's like a window that is frosted or yellowed. With the right equipment, it's easy enough to peel out the clouded lens and replace it with a clear plastic one. Dr. Ruitt is ready to begin his surgery. With his modern equipment and expertise, it's a quick and simple procedure. It takes only minutes to replace each lens. But with more than 1,000 patients waiting, Dr. Ruitt's team needs to treat more than 100 people every day. In the developed world, cataracts rarely get so bad, especially in young people, that they result